This is Kelly.
And this is Amy.
And you're listening to Diary of a Death Investigator. We have been doing the ABCs of death investigation. Originally, I thought it was going to be a 2-parter. That's turned into a 4-parter. So you're welcome.
Little did she know. I'm a wealth of knowledge.
Amy's learning us up on all things death investigation related. So the last time we talked, you finished up with S for slippage, Amy's favorite thing. Starting us off with the T's.
I'm just thinking of skin slippage. Just like, the more you hate it, it's like the more you got. So it was like...
So you should have loved it. Welcomed it into your universe.
Yeah, right. Something like that. Just love to hate it. So... Yeah, T, toxicology. So toxicology, I'll just start with what we did in the morgue. And that was a really big responsibility. And some people were really good at it. You could definitely tell who sucked at it. And mostly it was because they did not like needles. And actually, because of this, I got over my fear of needles, which is really funny because I used to hate having my blood drawn. And now I'm like, I used to stab people with 16 gauge needles. So I'm like, I got this. So weird how that works. It's a mind thing, maybe.
So when you say that people are really good at it and people are really bad at it, how do you do it? Because I guess I didn't know. I just knew that you guys took toxicology every time, but I don't know what that meant.
So I will tell you. The easiest to do is to take vitreous humor from the eyes. And vitreous from the eyes, it's literally like popping grapes. You can mess that up too if you go too far. So it's actually the smallest needle, something that you would get a shot with. And you typically will go in from the sides of the eye, kind of like where your crease is, and you'll go in through the side. And you don't apply too much pressure, but you can see the needle through the cornea when you go in.
Oh, that's weird.
Well, and then you just start pulling back and it's clear fluid, but you want to get vitreous from both eyes. You don't always have to, but it's good just to have more than not enough. You do that because you can actually see the electrolytes. So a lot of times doctors will order electrolytes from vitreous. So you get vitreous from the eyes. That's the easy one. Unless someone is so badly decomposed, the eyes will just deflate. So yeah, you get vitreous, and bugs also like eyes. So that's another thing.
Is that considered an orifice? Or maybe when the eyeballs aren't there anymore?
It's a good question. I mean, technically you have a really thin bone behind the eyes. I don't know.
Would the tear duct be considered an orifice?
The flies will lay eggs in the eyes, so they do like that. I don't know. That's a good question.
Look it up and then get back to us on it.
You stumped me there on that one. Oh, okay. So then we take heart blood. So actually, your heart, and it depends on, everyone's different. Some people's hearts are bigger than others. And so the heart might sit a little bit more in the center or a little bit lower because some people have enlarged hearts. So they told me when I was training, and I think I've talked about this before, when we've taken heart blood, they used to tell me go from the nipple, technically on a man, you go 2 finger widths in and down. And so I just got to the point where I knew kind of where to shoot for. In the chest, I would go a little more towards the center, actually, because your heart sits a little more in towards the center than it does towards your left chest. And then you go obviously in between the rib cage. So you have to go through cartilage as well. But you're also think about women, you're going to have to go through some fat in the chest. So you also have to sometimes go in through a lot of skin and a lot of fat. So you have a 16 gauge needle. So you have to get a little bit bigger that's how you get through that, though. And you have to get through cartilage. So sometimes you have to just push a little bit.
Well, we've talked about how difficult that is.
Yeah. But think about like the heart's also a muscle. And so you can always tell when you hit that muscle, though. It's a different feeling when you finally hit that muscle. And then once you hit that, that's really easy to pull. But sometimes too, you can have like pericardium. It's what surrounds the heart, and you can have fluid that fills up in between that, which isn't a good thing. And so sometimes you can get fluid that's surrounding the heart, and you can definitely tell there's difference. It's not as thick. So sometimes you might get a whole full syringe of fluid, and so you have to shoot that out and then go back in. You can also get, if someone's in like a bad accident or something, you can also get like cavity blood where you go in just into the like the stomach area. So like under the sternum in the chest, and you can get blood from the stomach cavity. That can also be a good indicator. Like think of if someone had like a ruptured spleen or something. Sometimes someone will get cavity blood. They'll do that a lot if they open someone up in full autopsy. Sometimes if they can't get a good pull on blood from like the heart, if the heart is just pumping blood into the cavity, they'll just literally get like a ladle and they'll just scoop blood. Yeah. Well, sometimes they have to measure how much blood that is because think of how many liters. It's like 7 to 8 liters on average.
Oh my gosh, that's so much.
Well, yeah, the human body, I mean...
People forget though. So a liter is like one of those bottles you see behind the back bar at a bar. That's a liter.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's 7 of those in your body, that's a lot.
In an adult, yeah. So, and a lot of that has to do with like someone's body weight as well. And then I think it's like 2 or 3, if you lose that much blood, that's kind of like when you kind of lose consciousness. So if you're bleeding that into your body, like, or into your lungs or something, that's kind of no bueno. That's when you kind of get like stars in your eyes. So yeah, you can get blood from the body cavity, femoral blood. This is the one that I see people really freak out about because they don't like hitting that vein in the legs. And it's just kind of an awkward spot too. And sometimes it's really hard to hit if you're not practiced. But someone taught me like a trick that you do. So your femoral vein is like the biggest vein that runs down your leg, both sides, right? And then it comes up through kind of like your groin area. And so you try to hit the femoral artery kind of up near the groin area. That's the easiest place of access. And you have to do it at an angle. Like you can't just shoot it straight down. That's where a lot of people mess up. So you have to go in at an angle because your veins, like you're just gonna have a better shot this way. It's like someone trying to give you an IV. Have you ever had one where someone, yeah. I'm like, what are you doing, idiot? I've had someone like practice on me like a couple months ago and I was like, if you do that one more time.
No, thank you. I don't need anyone to practice on me.
They tried doing the back of my forearm and I was like, I'm bruised. So, but when you hit that femoral artery in the leg, it kind of pops. So it freaks people out.
I'm freaked out and I'm not even doing it.
That's the best place to get blood from. Yeah, because it circulates really well. So yeah, you can get a lot of blood from there once you hit that artery. But that's also, have you ever heard of like people say like if you hit that artery, you bleed out really fast. So you have to pack that artery if you get hit there. So anyways, once we get that toxicology, that is the normal toxicology that we take on everyone. During a full autopsy, you can like literally the doctors will take whatever they want. So if they want body parts, they can take certain organs. Now, if we have a body that is really badly decomposed, I think I've said this before, they'll take like a part of the liver.
Oh, let me guess what you're going to say. Blend it?
Yeah, they blend it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, what else are you going to do? So yeah, it smells terrible. I remember going in there one time. I'm like, what are you doing? And just take this piece of liver and they just like, and it's like green brown. You're like, eh.
Like, yeah, no thanks.
Don't think I want a smoothie that is that color ever. Yeah, because that's just what you think about. So yeah, that's
toxicology.
I mean, even other things. So like we were talking about like even histology, right? So you have cases like baby shaken syndrome. We had a really bad one once. And sometimes doctors will look at like the eyes because the eyes will bruise. So yeah, I mean, it's really not limited to like anything. They can look at anything. Even doctors for like gunshot wounds that are like hard contact or close contact, they'll take parts of the skin to look at like the soot patterns where they can send that off to histology. And yeah, that's toxicology. It's actually pretty interesting. You can tell a lot from that. That can be your entire case right there, especially for overdoses. We did have a case, especially for designer drugs. LSD was kind of coming back there for a second, especially in a pretty affluent area. There is some of those areas around here. They were mixing some LSD in with some weed. And there was something that we didn't have in our lab that we had like the allele to test it with or against. And so they had to like send it off to like another lab to have it tested because like we just didn't have that, like it wasn't a thing. And so for overdoses and drugs, especially like toxicology is such a big thing. Like that's what your whole case like relies against. Otherwise, how else would you tell it's an overdose unless you saw, you can't even rule that out. Like even just when you find pills in someone's system, it's like, well, that doesn't really tell you anything, especially if they're a young person. You just have to show that in numbers somehow. Yeah. Toxicology, science, chemistry, school. So our other T word is Tardieu. And Tardieu, like petechia, is basically just the bursting of blood vessels underneath your skin. Tardieu is going to be basically like, you can see that all over the body. We see all that a lot in cases where people would have like massive heart attacks, basically what we would call like widowmakers. And those cases, you would see those people would be like purple, like dark purple, like from the chest up. And that's basically just because like the blood couldn't circulate anywhere else after basically their heart was completely blocked off. So then you would see like these dark purple spots all over their chest and like their back because it's just like burst blood vessels. So that's Tardieu. Then we have you. So for you, we have uninterpretable. So uninterpretable. Yeah, say that 5 times fast. It's a mouthful. This covers kind of a wide range of things. This can be like, say, for example, you get back, like we were just talking about toxicology, like a report, and say like there's not like a high enough percentage or something of drug, or maybe there's not enough blood in someone's system for you to even test that. That would be, you can't interpret that, right? There's not enough to interpret that, or the results aren't clear enough. I don't know. I guess it's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah, it is.
So my other thing I have listed here is unidentified. And I don't know how this works really in any other state because it was kind of our responsibility, which I thought was weird because we wore so many different hats and didn't get paid enough to do it. But unidentifieds, this was really anybody that came in, 1, without any identification. 2, someone who was decomposed beyond recognition, even though they could be locked inside their home and they were last seen wearing those same exact clothes and they have their driver's license on them and jewelry that is theirs and all these things. Or for example, like house fires where they're burnt to crisp, which I completely understand. Drownings, stuff like that where people just look, bones, that kind of stuff. Unidentified people, oh my gosh, sometimes it just seems so impossible. And we actually became really good. The investigators, on top of everything that we did, we became really good at that. If we couldn't do fingerprinting, we would call hospitals, dentists. We would just start cold calling people. We would just look in the general area where they died at, and we would just start cold calling.
I feel like I would have been really good at that.
It's not fun on top of your other duties that you have to do every day.
It sounds like really time consuming.
It is, because you have an anthropologist who that's basically their job. So yeah, you're just kind of like, I don't have time to go pick up dental records or all this stuff when I'm taking calls and going to scenes. And yeah, unidentified, man, you can really, especially when it's like a big city and you have like a lot of homeless, and you really are hoping that they have all their life's possessions in their backpack with some like hospital records. So you're like, yes, they have something to go off of, which sounds terrible, but you just hope that they have some form of something to go off of. So yeah, unidentified, man. And then even then you're like, who do we release to? So sometimes as people, we'd have like our long-term cooler and they would just stay in there.
That's sad.
Yeah, because it's like no one's calling for this person. So unidentified. All right. So V, visceral, or more like viscera, I would say. Viscera is going to be like your lower, say, torso, or more like abdominal organs. So when I think of viscera, I think of like your digestive parts, more like your intestines. So when I think of this, I think of a case I specifically had. Well, I've had a couple cases having to do with intestines coming out, but this one specifically, this guy comes to this girl's house and he steals her purse, and he thought he was gonna shoot her dad. And turns out the dad ends up chasing him down across the street and shooting him. Well, the way the projectile comes through is through the guy's lower back and then exits through the front lower abdomen. And the bullet drags his intestines out through the front. And I was like, whoa, like when I first saw it, I was like, what is that? And I was like poking at it with one of my long Q-tips. And I was like, I can't. I was like, it's dark. And one of the CSIs shines a light on it. I was like, oh, it's his intestines. I was like, that's kind of cool. I was like, should I poke it back? And I was like, no, I'm kind of afraid if I poke it back in there, which actually pretty impressive that the projectile didn't tear it. So the human body, quite impressive. Yeah. Other words we have, or phrases, I guess, vascular disease. So vascular disease as a whole is like a pretty general term. So vascular has to basically kind of do with just your vessels. So when you think of vascular, or I guess when I think of vascular, I think of like, because this one is very common, or what I heard a lot, it's like cardiovascular disease. So CVD, we got that one a lot. So like a blood vessel or heart vessel disease, like you could have plaque buildup or weak veins, something like that.
Is vascular like your vein system, or what is it?
Yeah, it's like your blood vessels. You have a bazillion of them in your body. It's like a maze. We have one more V word here. That's going to be victim. Ooh, not everyone was a victim that was a decedent. But you could also say that someone who was like suicidal was also a victim, because sometimes you had people that were like bullied that were like victims too. I would say that, of course, obviously homicides, there were victims. So I don't know. Victim is kind of more up to law enforcement than it would be for us, because we're not like coroner. That's kind of more of a law enforcement term. That's what I'd say on that. W, waste left in body. So in terms of that, are you saying like...
I wrote this question for Amy, or waste. I just wanted to know, and I think we talked about it maybe a couple episodes ago, about what happens when waste is left in your body. So like, do you guys drain the waste? Do you leave the waste inside, or?
Okay. If it is just a viewing autopsy, obviously everything stays inside of someone. But when we do full autopsies, okay, so when they are prepping for a full autopsy, what they have next to the doctor is this bucket. And then in the bucket is this red hazard bag. And so as they are going through each part of the body and like organs and stuff, they cut up the parts that they want to go to histology. And the parts that go to histology, they label, they're like these little plastic cups with lids. And they put these parts into these cups that have like the formalin in them, right? They're already prepped. And then they write on these cups, and then the cups get labels later with like the case number and everything. So then those parts get sealed up. But whatever leftover parts don't go for testing, they get put into this red bag.
Oh, I bet that bag smells horrible.
Yeah. And then as far as when they get to the bowels, so same thing. They go through the bowels and then they measure how much is in there. They have like one of those big, like, help me, what is?
I don't know.
A pitcher.
Amy's like moving her arms back and forth like a dump thing.
Pouring thing. They put them into like this pitcher and then they weigh how much is in there. And then they put so much into like one of their cups that needs to get tested. And then the rest of it gets poured down the drain, which these drains have garbage disposals and stuff, because like liquid stuff obviously isn't going to go into like this hazardous bag, but everything that's like a solid that goes into this bag. Basically, once everything's done, this bag then gets tied up. And then it goes back into the person, back into their body cavity.
Oh.
Well, it's supposed to go with the person, right?
I mean, I guess if it's yours, you should keep it.
Yeah, it's part of the body. So it goes with the person, and the person then gets sewn up, and then they go on to their funeral home, and then the funeral home deals with that.
That's gross.
Well, you asked.
I know. Actually, I think when we were building the A to Z list, Amy and I had a Google Doc going on and we were going back and forth. And I was with Mama Mia. And I think we were trying to think of like W words. And I think she helped me with waste. And that was her question too. So you're welcome.
Well, now Mom knows too. So I don't think that's weird. Like, why would it be weird for, you know what? Your body parts are in you now. What are they doing now?
Yeah, but they were done. They're done working.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's the best way to like put everything back. I mean, or like store it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's normal. It should go with me somewhere, wherever I'm going. We're on X. Okay, so we do x-rays. Every single person that comes in. Now, I don't know if every medical examiner's office does this, but ours did. Everyone got an x-ray. And it's just a really easy way for doctors just to distinguish kind of, well, one, does this person have any restorations? Is there anything going on inside this person that we aren't aware of? Because sometimes, well, x-rays will show air inside of someone, like in lungs and stuff like that. So if there's any type of weird shadowing, that's a pretty good giveaway. Is there any type of
hidden gem?
Well, that for one. And two, was there like a gunshot wound we weren't aware of? Or like an old gunshot wound? Because then it actually becomes a delayed homicide. So then that needs to be a full autopsy. So stuff like that, because that's important.
What was the craziest thing that you've ever seen come through an x-ray?
Well, I don't want to give it away because this is kind of for a different date story.
All right. So next episode, will you do the case on that?
Sure. Because I was kind of like, I had a suspicion of what I thought it was. And then I was like,
That's not what you thought it was.
Well,
it's okay. We'll talk about it next episode.
Yeah, I don't know. I always like proving people wrong, though. There was one case, and I freaking hate this guy. He's an air quote expert that does these like classes where he charges people a buttload of money. And this case went to trial, and actually have a friend that was a lawyer on this case, and it turned into a whole thing, which this will probably be a case I talk about later, but I ended up proving this guy wrong from an x-ray, and I was like, expert my butt.
Now hand over the money that you just made. I'm the expert now.
I felt very vindicated because it's one of those things like being a woman kind of thing, you know? So
I feel like you should have a shirt made that says, I'm the expert now.
yeah, he felt really dumb after that. Let's just say that. So anyways, yeah, x-rays, super helpful. And then I will just say, also, when people have drugs on them, when they come in and they're not always found because your people sometimes are lazy when they're searching bodies when they come in, they can have like needles or something. So it kind of saves you from getting poked by needles when you're taking their clothes off later. Yeah, that's also really nice when you have x-rays. So that's a plus. Okay, so why STR? It's a DNA thing. And basically, it has to do with how many times during a test for DNA, something shows up basically during this time, or they call it like hits. Something comes up like on a match to like your chromosome. So it's basically just matching up during a test. Say you want to say for parents, like, is this kid... are you the father? Like an episode of Maury. They're just going to say, does this match to this person? So like, how many hits on this chromosome does this have? So that's basically what it is. Just DNA. That is the easiest way.
That's a pretty good way of understanding it.
Yeah, DNA can get super complicated in all those tests. All right, Z, we made it. So zooarchaeology, this is the animal side of your archaeologist or your anthropologist, I guess I should say, because I guess they kind of go hand in hand. So basically, our anthropologist did this job as well, because he could distinguish between what's an animal and what's a human bone. So a lot of times what we got was a death call. I think I talked about this earlier, was like, hey, these hunters found these bones out while hunting, and I didn't know what was a deer or a human like femur. And so I was like, can you just send me a picture of that before I drive 2 hours? And then I would then send these pictures on to like my anthropologist. Or one time I drove out to a lake because my anthropologist never replied to me like on a Saturday morning. And so I just collected these bones in a bag and I drove them back to our office, and 5 hours later was like, yeah, that's like a bird. Because it was like we had cranes and stuff like that.
Oh, okay. So it was a big bird.
Yeah, it looked kind of like rib bones. And so, in all fairness, a cop sees that, which I'm like, that's fair, because like, I don't know either. I took one archaeology class in college for this purpose, but one class is not going to make me an expert in this. So yeah, I think it's a super important job though, especially for when you're finding something that's buried like several feet underground. It might be someone's dog. So,
oh yeah,
someone's pet, you know, say someone moves in and they decide they're going to plant a tree and they start digging and they're like, oh my gosh, I found bones. And it's, yeah, someone's dog. So
yeah. So we did it. A to Z. Hopefully everybody learned something. I learned a lot. I know we applied a lot of it to cases that we've already talked about. I'm sure that you'll continue to apply it to cases that we will continue to talk about, just like the x-ray. And now I'm super curious what that case is about.
It's one that I kind of alluded to earlier.
Oh, okay. Something for us to look forward to, but thanks everybody for sticking this out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed it.
Act like you're a big brain now and use all these big words in a conversation.
Become the expert. So if you have any questions, you can email us at kelly@diaryofadeathinvestigator.com, or you can message us on our Instagram page, Diary of a Death Investigator. And until next time,
bye.